into reality. So that's why it's the most, in my opinion, the most fun lecture. So yeah, it's about prototyping, of course. This is roughly the, what we are doing, right? The design thinking approach. And what we are doing now and focusing on this is the second phase, which was the explorer phase of the design thinking methodology, if you like. This was understanding, so the user research mainly, and this is now it's time for exploring a little bit. And exploring is always fun, right? So first, well, we were mostly going to build prototypes and focus on this one. Ideate is basically brainstorming, and while prototyping, of course, you need to look into what has happened, the results of the previous phase, and then you start having and generating some ideas, and that's what you have here, the ideate. But they actually go along together. Remember that everything in the design thinking approach is intertwined. We try to give you phases into step one, step two, step three, but in reality, everything is mangled. Okay, so don't regard this as a step one, step two, so rigid approach. But yeah, of course, we are learning, so we try to do into steps all these putting all these concepts into steps. So that's fine for the learning purposes. But in reality, everything is intertwined, and you will see cycles every time working into cycles. So, well, here, prototype, let's quickly read the formal definition based on this approach, design thinking, and is get the idea out there quickly to start receiving feedback immediately. So if I have to summarize the lecture in one line, in one imperative line, this is it. Nothing really hidden in the prototype method, in the prototype form, if you like. So yeah, this would be it. I could even say it shorter, and I could say build it and build it quickly. And that's the lecture about. Some structure about this, what's going to happen the coming 2 weeks. The assignment, it's also like the previous one. So for 2 weeks, you have one assignment. And I'm not so sure if the assignment literally tell you to use the same groups that you have formed, but to me, it makes sense if you already continue with those with the groups that you already formed. And submit one person per group the assignment of week 8 together. Okay, so there's only one assignment for this coming 2 weeks. And what we're going to look into is prototype design techniques. Yeah, a lot of people call it techniques, others call it approaches, or call it systems or methods. It's all the same. Okay, just some tools that allow you to come up with prototypes and already test your ideas, validate your ideas. That's all what we're going to see today. We're going to see just a couple of them, but of course there are plenty more. And feel free to just go and explore yourself more methods and bring it to the classroom if you like, in order to discuss those methods a little bit deeper. If I know it, of course, because it's not that I know all the methods out there. But yeah, the goal should be clear, and that's what we try to tackle today. Well, the assignment is already, you know where to find an assignments. Okay, learning goals. Let's recap, by the way. Some people ask me questions about regarding a specific assignments, and they're a little bit nervous about the grade, and they're a little bit nervous about the result itself based on the assignment. You should try, and I understand that, because perhaps you're coming from a different way of studying in terms of grades, right? And but you should try to do your best to understand that this is actually less important than what you are accustomed to. So the grade of a specific assignment should not be of your highest importance. What you need to focus is on a learning outcome. And learning outcome you can achieve not by just supplying one specific assignment, but supplying a clear progress in 6 months that, for example, you have to learn experience design. So in 6 months, we're going to look into your learning processes, and we have some learning outcomes as you already know. And just to recall these learning outcomes, because I think it's a set of 7 or 8 that you have to accomplish as for the whole semester. Here, you need to focus on 2, especially for this specific lecture. You know, you will, or experience design itself, you will focus on this learning outcome. Apply different prototype design techniques to realize the target user's these needs should be discovered in the user research phase. So yeah, you see, we are already in a way implicitly telling you the whole process in one single learning outcome. So you should not really be worried about the grade of this specific assignment, but you should be worried that you have the necessary means, the necessary understanding to actually achieve this learning outcome. And we can validate in the end of the semester. Of course, we have some assessments in between, but just to clarify that point, don't be that worried about the grade of a specific assignment. Be worried about your learning process, because that's how we evaluate in the end if you deserve or not to pass experience designs and therefore the whole semester. Okay, it's a unified way of looking at things. And here we look into the second learning outcome: produce a working prototype that gives a good user experience. And of course, this lecture is gives you the necessary means to achieve this specific goal. Not only this lecture, but this is a high important lecture for accomplishing this second one. Okay, so I hope you start already twisting a little bit the idea that your mental model of how grading goes in Fontys. So what is a prototype? I like some interaction here. What do you think a prototype is? Anyone want to share? Maybe some experiences in the past?
It's a working progress of a subject, maybe, or anything, an object. The first version.
First version, work in progress. Those are nice keywords. Nice food for thought already. Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else? Did anyone in the past have any experience with building a prototype of anything? Could be a service, could be a product, anything, hardware, software. No? Well, in reality, guys, is as in design, that's pretty normal. And if you remember the first lecture, about the design thinking and user experience itself, and I always stress this for a reason, the definition of something. And it's not like math or hard sciences, in which 1 + 1 is 2, and nobody can debate that. Here, it's all the time, in design especially, it's all the time a lot of discussions between one set of people saying one thing and another set of people saying a slightly different thing when it comes to defining specific concepts. Prototype is not an exception. I have read some books that says one thing about prototypes. I have read other books that said slightly different stuff about prototype. Of course, we're not going to just reach consensus in this lecture what a prototype is, but at least some ideas in which you should have in mind. And whenever you're discussing with the in the industry, in the work industry, in the professional industry that later on you're going to step into, just have this clear idea that it's what a prototype is. We're going to see our general definition, but never try to convince the other person that they are wrong about the prototype, because I'm telling you there are different versions of what a prototype is, and we would try to see today into the differences of why people think this is a prototype, why people think this other should be a prototype, and so on. So it's nice to have an idea what this means, but be open-minded when it comes to, especially when it comes to a discussion of what a concept actually means. Okay. Well, prototypes. I already heard it's the first version of your product. That's a good one. Let me see actually here. It is an early stage of a product, service, or idea. And you might be thinking that, sorry, I did not look into the names who was talking to me, but the person who said like the first version, it looks like we could agree with him, right? That's an early stage of a product. That's the first version. However, when we talk in software as a first version of a product, if you call it a version, that is normally that version gets published out there and is already a finalized product. But if you say an early stage of a product, you should not confuse with that first version of a product. Because before that first version of the product, you have the prototypes, and you test them, and you validate your assumptions, your ideas, and then you end up with the first version, and so on. So in this case, we're not going to mix those concepts, the versions of a system, especially in software, and the prototype. They are different. So I don't know, whoever gave us these hints, I don't know if you actually meant the early stage of a product or a software, or you actually meant the first version with those words. But let's be clear. Let's not confuse the first version with the prototype. Different things, okay? So an early stage of a product, service, or idea is kind of a general concept, but it's good for us. It's good enough for us. Okay, so whatever is early stage of your software, that is considered a prototype. Not the final version, not the first version. It's just an early stage of a product. As a matter of fact, if you look into the etymology of this prototype, you can just divide it into two words. Proto is one, and type, of course, type means it's a different word. But type means categorization. No need to really look into that. But proto, what does that mean? If you look into the etymology of this proto word, it means origin. It means first. So that's what we said, an early stage of a product. So it's depicting the first ideas that you come up with, and you need to validate. Okay, so not a finalized product. And then we have, it can be used to explore and test different things, and of course that's the reason for building prototypes. A function, which means what this thing should do. A form, what should this look like, and the interaction itself. Now, yes and no in here, because it depends on how much time you actually have to validate specific ideas, how many ideas you want to validate at once. So then we're talking about high fidelity or low fidelity prototypes, and then we have like a cocktail Molotov. Like, it depends on how much factors, how much ingredients you want to input into this cocktail called prototype. But I hope the idea is a bit clear, at least of what a prototype is. Now, prototypes and user-centered design, everything here is user-centered design. That's what we call the whole module experience design. And we focus on the users. Well, let's have a look what it says. This is like, prototypes are used to test your ideas with end users. So once by now you already have your user requirements specifications, the user needs. Now is the actual, the dirty work comes in place, and you need to brainstorm in how you're gonna actually deliver for those needs, users' needs, whatever you found in the user research phase. And now I hope it makes sense, the whole process that you're dealing with, because you have a list of user stories, and that list becomes a design later on. But of course, we know we might have some ideas on how to solve specific user requirements. Even within your group, you might disagree, because now you gotta sit down, look through that list of items of user requirements, and come up with ideas, right? And you will see that some people will come with certain ideas, and some others would say, and maybe that would not work, debating with you. So that's actually brainstorming. And what I would say is, do not be, you are the people that know best and most about what you're busy with. That means that you're biased towards it, and you know too much about design, you know too much about the ins and outs of what you're doing. So the best thing is to test it. And that's why we need to build prototypes, in order to validate our ideas, in order to validate our assumptions. Yeah, that's the reason to be. And do it quickly, because in the past, we used the waterfall approach, in which you do the user research phase, and after 6 months, you come with an awesome product. That is not a prototype. That was the first version of a product, if that was a software, let's say. And that was the first version and final version for your client. And then you go, of course, you have more time to take decisions, but you never had actually immediate feedback from the actual users. So that was kind of the risky. And now software industry move towards this new agile approach of building things. And if you look carefully, what we're doing here is building our this process, building our designs also in an agile way, in cycles. Get your prototypes, build your prototypes as soon as possible, validate your ideas, your assumptions with the actual users as early as possible, and then just refine. So that's the reason to be for prototypes. The second line says prototyping minimizes the chance that you waste time or money on a product that doesn't suit your user needs. For the same reason, time is critical, time is money, and we need to be certain that whenever you're releasing the product, that product is going to work. Nobody wants to build awesome products that nobody uses. That would be a waste of time, that would be a waste of money, that would be a waste of too many valuable resources. And good user-centered design, it equals a lot of prototyping. Yes, basically, because this is how you should actually think of, and when the confusion starts building up. You should, first of all, you will be never ready. So the sooner you start and the sooner you actually deploy your product, even if it's not as good as if you are the owner of that product. Product owners normally have this inner feeling like, we're gonna release this product, but I don't feel like this is the version yet. It's still a prototype. It's like, they have these contradicting feelings, but they don't have time. That's reality. Reality works in a different way than educational environment or ideal environments. So don't blame yourself too much. The thing is, the goal should be validate the ideas quickly. If it's not perfect yet, doesn't matter. Just put your product out there and gather feedback, because your product will never be finished. That's what we have nowadays, updates and constantly improving the system. So, and the reason I said why the confusion starts here is because some people consider even first version or the versions in terms of systems that they deploy, even those finalized between quotes systems are prototypes, because the product is actually never ending. You all the time gathering feedback, and just look at your daily apps, WhatsApp, YouTube, and those are good examples that constantly improving themselves. And you could say like, okay, wait a minute, is this a prototype or not? And I have a personal story here, and because I used to be more a kind of a perfectionist type of person, and then these kind of people have very, very difficult time when it comes to quickly build some things and put it out there. And it's because exactly that, you want this to be perfect, right? But reality doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But if you are this kind of person too, I would highly recommend you this book of this awesome guy, Eric Ries, I guess, The Lean Startup, over here. Make note of this one, The Lean Startup, and this is a guy in which he tells you why you should rapidly build prototypes and put your product, which is actually not a finalized product, but it's a minimum viable product. In other words, you can consider that also as a prototype. But you will learn a lot about these new concepts. This guy's a highly influential guy in the startups world. Companies that are actually starting with fresh ideas, and you want to conquer the world. And he himself is a founder of some of those companies, and he tells the road, the story, his story with his companies, and you will see the ups and downs, and also advantages and disadvantages on why you should focus on really prototyping really fast. So a lot of prototyping allows you to gather feedback, to validate your assumptions and validate your ideas for improvement in your product or services. Well, I mentioned quickly about this MVP, Eric Ries, and his book, and why it's important to rapidly make things happen and validate those. And time is money. And if you're a company or you're working for a company, you gotta be profitable. Otherwise, you die in the market. So that is why we have this approach, rapid prototyping. Actually, there are books written about this one. But basically, the idea is you have some ideas, prototype them as soon, very quickly. Even sketching with pen and paper, that would be enough to validate plenty of ideas actually. After that, you test usability testing. We briefly talked about that. You actually executed somehow those already. So and then gather feedback. And with that feedback, of course, you're going to refine your product. And every time that product becomes better and better and better. Now there is a nice line of this guy. It was scientific, Linus Pauling. There's a typo here. It should be with a G in the end. Linus Pauling with a G in the end. And he said to build a good idea, or something like that. He's not actually like exactly like this one, but something like this. To build a good idea, you must first have lots of ideas. And that sounds right, because if I problem and then I tell you, tell me how you would solve it. One of the methods, one of the things that we normally use in these brainstorming sessions when you're solving a problem, you should discard the first idea. And that might be sounding, if you are like not familiar with brainstorming sessions and solving problems, critical thinking, all that, then that might be a little bit, it sounds to you maybe too crazy. Like, why would I discard the first idea? And the reason is very simple, because if that's the first thing you imagined, you came up with, well, how many other people would have actually came with exactly that same thing? So yeah, there you go. Having a lot of ideas, brainstorming within a group, that's always a good idea. So when you have well, now you already have the user requirements. Now it's time for brainstorming sessions. And yeah, a lot of people say like, okay, we're gonna get together, we're gonna think about solutions. My personal tips is like, when I look at people brainstorming, yeah, they fall into this, like the first idea, and they try to implement that idea. Wrong. Just discard that idea, or just be critical with that idea, question that idea. But do not question technology, because a lot of people, especially students, make this next mistake, and that is it possible? That is not actually the moment in which you should question if that is possible or not, if it's technological possible or not. Just let your mind fly a little bit, be creative. It's think like a kid. Actually, that helps a lot. That's my second tip. Think like a kid, and you will see the massive of solutions that will come. Yeah, you will come up with. And yeah, don't constrain yourself by technology, but if it's possible or not, just be wild in brainstorming sessions and how to build it, because those things contribute to very good ideas in the end. And of course, you got to compile them and test all those ideas, and you will see that in the end, you're perhaps going to merge some of those ideas, and then the result would be indeed a good product, a good service. We try to put that line of polling in a prototype version, and to build a good product, you must first have lots of prototypes. Well, here, yeah, in general, you get the idea, right, from here to here. But in reality, what I've seen is not always the case. So I partially disagree with this line, or I partially agree with this line, I would say. And yeah, it's you know, when Google builds the next feature in a specific app, or the next app, they normally build prototypes as well. These are called A/B testing. You know, when they have some ideas and they test among the users. I don't know if you ever got an invitation of testing a product from Google or any other company. If you're registered as a developer, or you're registered as a early adopter, some companies allow you to do that, then you will get this notification. So I encourage you to really go and register to these companies. If they offer this option of early adopter, then you should do that, because it's fun, because you are the first one providing feedback in those products, and you will get an invitation for specific tests. So it's not that Google built a lot of prototypes and they come up with a good product. No, in this case, they just built a couple of prototypes, and just literally 2 prototypes most of the time. And they test it, and they choose, based on the results, they choose the best one. So it's not all the time like this is true. Like in order to have a good product, you need lots of prototypes. First of all, how many? It's lots of prototypes. So don't try to be quantify this idea of having a lot of prototypes. The point should be build something quickly to validate your assumptions. And if you can do that in one prototype, fantastic. Stop there and just continue the process. It doesn't mean that you need to build a prototype for every specific idea in order to have lots of prototypes. So don't interpret this idea here wrong. Then we do, yeah, once again, different graphs. Perhaps you're already finding the pattern here of the many graphs that we present to you in process development, in software development, in design thinking. You're already familiar with that, right? It runs in cycles. But here, this specifically talks about the prototype. And if you look onto, can you see my mouse, guys? Can you see the mouse here?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I should put this, I think it's the laser, that's right. Okay, here, the idea is that, as I said, the prototype in your mind, the second word that you should think of is quick, fast, because that is the point, validating your ideas in the quickest way possible. So what are we going to do first when you have that idea or that specification, that user story that you already worked with, that was the outcome of the user research? Well, you're going to come up with a concept. And a lot of people actually call this not a prototype, but a proof of concept. But for us, we're going to just put it as if they were equal. In the first cycle of that prototype, you are going to not think about technology, not think if that's needed to be put into a database, the data that you're going to deal with, nothing like that. You're just going to even take pen and paper. That's my favorite method, if you like, the paper prototype over here you see, and you can sketch it very quickly. In a matter of minutes, you will have already a concept, and you draw it on paper, and you just test it with people. Usability testing, mostly. That's what I personally do, and that's normally what happens. But you already know observations, you already know a service, so any of that you can combine and run that. Those sessions in order to test your prototypes. So that happens. Nothing about the data. Just quickly on a paper, you make up some data there, and then you test it. Then you gather the data. That's the point, or the feedback, and then you're gonna extend that prototype a little bit. So the prototype itself becomes, in the second iteration, becomes a little bit better because you already, instead of just writing the data on a paper or not even having data whatsoever, here you will have a hard-coded prototype, it says. So here I have a paper. Here you already talk about using the skills that you already know. For example, well, at this point we haven't seen HTML, CSS, but we will see that in the coming weeks, and then you could actually build a website, let's say, based on those skills, and that prototype becomes a little bit better, right? It's not just a simple paper, but you already use those technologies to actually improve the look and feel. Whenever you present to the user for the second test here in this iteration, they are going perhaps to feel a little bit better. But still, it's a prototype, it's the data there is hard coded. So which means if you need 10 students, you're going to implement each of them using the tools, the front end technologies, perhaps, if we're talking about a website. And then in the third iteration or the next iteration, maybe you need more or less for the at least more, I would say, iterations to come up with a high fidelity prototype, what we call. And this prototype is talking about already front end, perhaps technologies. There's also back end technologies, and even connected to a database at the back, so you can now dynamically generate whatever data that you are talking your software is dealing with. So I hope you can see here the cycles and the process of prototyping, and that's why a lot of people does not agree. And a lot of books say one thing about prototype, and other books say another thing about prototype, because the spectrum is very wide. A paper prototype, that could be already enough for saying something is a prototype or test your ideas. Or maybe just high fidelity prototype would do a better job, or maybe you should do that, maybe you shouldn't do that. That's a matter of different discussion. We're not going to focus on that. We're just going to look into what works, what could work for you. And in my eyes, under my eyes, it's all the time. Time is perhaps the most important resource that a human being can have, and therefore a company can have as well. So the point is think of in terms of time, and that's why we build prototypes. And validate as early as possible with paper the main ideas that you have, and then you gradually improve that self prototype. Yeah, it could be that, by the way, it could be that you validate certain ideas here, but you cannot validate other ideas only with paper. So maybe that's the step that you drastically need. You can, from here, perhaps well, hardly, yeah, no, even, no, that's possible. Even with paper prototype, if you validate your ideas, if you see the results are promising, you could jump to the final version. So by no reason you should think that the prototype should go in this way. If you have validated your ideas, if you think and you feel confident, your company feels confident, and you have a good result tests based on this paper prototype, you can immediately deliver the final version. So do not think that this is 1, 2, 3 all the time. It needs to happen that way. Okay. If you have the time, basically, time is your enemy here or your biggest friend. Because if a company tells you like you have 1 month to deliver this prototype, damn, that's a lot of time. That's realistically speaking, that's super. That's a lot of time. So you could go for this approach, like, you know, step by step, different cycles, improve your the prototype itself, validate ideas, and then in the end, when you have a near to final product version prototype, then you have the green light to go to the final version. So basically, is time constraint being the boss in this flow. Okay, now we're going to talk about the fidelity, but I already mentioned quickly high fidelity or low fidelity, and you perhaps already understood me what I'm referring to, right? If it's a low, it has to do basically with these concepts. It's the level of detail and realism of your prototype. So if it's a sketch, like I'm gonna try the logging feature of a system, and I don't even have content in the logging system. That maybe that's a bad example. I'm testing simply a website, the layout of a website in for a system. And well, I do not have content, let's say. I just make up some words or a lot of Ipsum. Maybe you have read this lorem ipsum test fonts and content. If you don't have that, well, that's not a realistic model, right? A prototype. So we are talking about it there in that specific case, a low fidelity prototype. So yeah, it mostly has to do with the visual, the content, the interactivity. If you are lacking massively, if you're lacking those aspects in your prototype, then you can say my prototype is low fidelity. On the other hand, if you pay great detail and attention to these aspects, and the prototype reflects the almost finished product, then you're talking about a high fidelity prototype. That's the only. But these are kind of buzzwords. It's not that high fidelity guarantees actually anything. It depends on what are you trying to achieve in terms of what if I'm spending 2 weeks on a high fidelity prototype, and then my findings while testing the prototype are completely like, oh my goodness, I have to start over because the test, the design itself is not good in this prototype. So whereas if I have my strategy as I'm going to start low fidelity basing my design, and I come up with this, let's say in 1 hour I have my low fidelity prototype, and then I test it, I already immediately have valuable information the same day. So it doesn't mean that because you have a high fidelity prototype, your final product actually is going to be better, or your design is actually better than when you are basing your product in a low fidelity prototype. Do not make that mistake. Yep. Another interesting part here is the interaction, and here is like this slide is very pretentious because it says like high fidelity. It's you used to test interaction, the flow, the layout, the how product, but that is inaccurate because even if in a low fidelity prototype, I could, and as a matter of fact, that's what I personally do and I prefer, rather than studying these latest technology that allow me to come up with the awesome high fidelity prototypes. Well, I first need to spend 1 week in learning the freaking tool, and I don't need that. I know, because I can just sketch on a paper all my dialog boxes, and I can just hire a person, and like it's gonna be the computer, right? So I can just all myself act as a computer, and I observe what the user is actually touching instead of clicking, because I only have papers and they are touching here, touching there, so I know the interaction. because I'm the computer, so I'm going to give, based on those users' tabs, I'm going to just give the next window, the next paper in my case. So yeah, this is, don't be misguided by high fidelity is only to test interaction and flow and layout, because with a low fidelity, that's also possible, entirely possible, and even faster. Yeah, this is in a snapshot, what we mean by fidelity. So sketching, that's my favorite on the left, and yeah, this is actually a great and good practice, guys. I know there are plenty of tools out there that allow you to do high fidelity models in a relatively quickly way. So yeah, feel free to explore those. We actually put here some list of tools. But focus on the goal. Why prototyping, and what are you trying to achieve, of course. Do not confuse that because you have colors here in these two. This is very visible why this is a low fidelity, of course, pen and paper, and that will do the job. Here, even though you have the content, and this looks also like a high fidelity, but you are, you are missing some of the design of specific items, as you can see in this zone. This is a high fidelity, more close to reality, to the final product, and this is less. But this is completely fine, because perhaps here you are testing something about the map itself. You are testing perhaps about the notification, and that's entirely fine. It depends on what idea you're trying to validate, assumption you're trying to validate. Yeah. Of course, this is the major advantage, because this is so close to the final product. So the observations that you gather here are going to be more, of course, high fidelity. But remember that time is critical, and that's a major factor for basing your decision which way I'm going there. By the way, here says just sketches, but this is, I consider myself as this is my favorite approach, but I consider this approach also as a low fidelity. Okay, so it's not because here I see a nicely some colors, and it's already a better fidelity than this one. Now this is also a low fidelity prototype. Now this slide tells me about design methods, and there's a website here, and there's a graph here. And when you look at the graph, or when you read this specific line, questions answered by research methods across the landscape, quite honestly, I'm a little bit lost. I don't know why the heck the person who created these slides put this one in here. But when I look at the graph, what people do, what people say, and we talked about behavior, attitudinal, or qualitative and quantitative things. That's or results. Those are based on the user research mostly. See that? So I briefly look into this website. Wait, let me. And you can. Oh, wait a moment. It's not a link. Well, you will visit later on. My point is here, I don't know what to tell you, because it's I might be even inaccurate. So don't pay much attention to this slide. This is going to be optional, because we're talking about prototype, and suddenly this is talking about service, talking about user research methods that we already talked about. So I don't want you to get confused, because I'm even confused with these slides. I'm going to just treat it as optional and continue. And this is again talking a little bit more general, outside the specificity of prototype, but this is focusing on the phases of a product development. And the reason I'm not going to tell you this is optional is because when you look at these levels, you can actually strategize, execute, and assess. You can map this with the approach that we are using here, and that's design thinking. So understand, explore, and materialize. Well, you can map all those goals, all those phases that we are from the beginning taking into consideration, and do the mapping with here. The interesting part is this one, the typical methods for a specific phase or a specific goal that you have. In this case, I see prototype over here. Prototype, paper prototype. And that's mostly what we are focusing on this lecture. And you will see the goal, and it's about execute. In our approach here, is about exploring. And the prototype, you'll find it there. So you can do the mapping and see why we're doing in a specific in this flow. Yeah. Okay, that's the only thing. We will see also other methods next week as well, like card sorting. What does it still today? And yeah, you will see plenty of more methods. And I think this website over here, it has to do with all the methods that you need in user experience design or usability, sorry, the user experience in general. And you can just map them into the whole process of a product development. I think that's the reason why you have these generalized slides rather than a specificity. Okay, but you could consider this as optional, and this is as a nice to read slide if you like. So let's continue with what we saw just in prototypes. You know, the easiest way is this one, a sketch, because it does not consume any of your time and puts your ideas into paper in a very explicit way, and you don't need to be cluttered with the amount of the stuff that you need in while doing high fidelity prototypes, like the tools and what and understanding how to use the tool, etc. Anyone can just sketch. Maybe you are like me, not an awesome drawer, but anyone can sketch anything. So these are very good examples already of you know, when you try to not only communicate ideas, but in terms of design, but already start testing some of those ideas. So that's a pretty good thing to do. That's what I normally personally do and advise to do first. And then we have another method, card sorting. And when we are designing, think about the navigation bar of a website that you are designing. Okay, I could ask the designer, hey, what are the elements that you're going to sort first and organize into this navigation bar? And he could tell me a lot about Gestalt. He can tell me a lot about what he thinks is best. But as a designer, you should know that because you know so much and so deep about the product that you are developing, you should never come up yourself with what you think it's best in terms of organizing the website as you like as a designer. And the reason is very simple, because you know too much about the product. Why not let the user come up with this answer? So it's very quickly, it's a nice, very effective method that you see here, and very effective. And the best thing is that you are letting, I mean, your job is being done by the users. So if you gather 5 people and you should have sticky notes, for example, to write, let's imagine that you need to, the task is to organize in a proper way all these elements in a navigation bar of your website, of a website. Then what I would write down is all these specific pieces of information or even features in sticky notes. Everyone knows about sticky notes. It's very accessible, very cheap. So you will write down all these elements. It could be features like logging, like info about page, or like main items. If it's a web shop, find product or something like that. Those are features of specific information or a specific data or specific, basically data content of your website. So you're gonna write down on sticky notes, and then normally, if it's a website that contains just 2-3 things, of course, there's nothing. Card sorting is not going to help you much. But normally, in a website, even a small size companies will have more than 30, 40, 50 elements, pieces of information, or features. So then, card sorting is a great. It could work for you. Definitely going to work for you. What you do is write down those contents, those features you summarize into 1 or 2 words maximum. You don't want to put a lot of information in the sticky notes. 1 or 2 words. You will end up with the 20, 30, 40, 50, you name it, sticky notes. And then the job is going to be very easy. You invite 5 people, around 5 people, 5 users of the future system, and you're going to tell them this question, this task. Whatever you think, you're going to present the sticky notes, and you're going to say to them, whatever you think it belongs together into groups, just put them together. That's it. The sticky notes I'm talking about. And you will see after 5, 6 attempts, 6 users do exactly the same tasks, you will start seeing a pattern in how actually people, your future users of the tend to group together those things and put it into groups. Then and then the work is done. You will be freaking surprised. The first times I was doing this card sorting, I was like massively surprised. I thought I have a lot of common sense, but my way of organizing things I was shocked, because when I saw other people doing that, I was like not understanding why the heck somebody is putting in this specific group these features whereas I had a totally different understanding of the product. And then that's exactly what I mean with validating my assumptions, because I thought one thing, and then I got like I hit the brick wall. Yeah, then they are right. It's not that I'm always right, but they are right. Perhaps that's what you want. Of course, I'm not telling you go blindly and trust that exactly what the users is telling you, but it's a trade-off. At least you should consider what you have found. And normally what you find, especially if you're testing with enough people, more than 5 users, and then you start seeing the patterns. If you have more people, that's even better, because the pattern actually starts confirming itself. So like, okay, that's actually the way these specific features should go in this specific group. So you let them do the work in terms of navigation bars. That's a pretty good exercise in which you should consider card sorting method. So it's a very simple method, and there are more details about it, but you can, yeah, there's a video here. I quickly was looking into that, but yeah, it's a bit boring, but you know, there's good stuff in there to learn. So, and it's not that long anyway. So read more about that, but I hope the idea is clear now. We already looked into paper prototype, but briefly, but okay, here's another video. You can just jump into it and see what that actually means, but in terms of practical meaning. But paper prototype is nothing more and nothing else than your design on paper, literally like that. The design that you came up with on paper, you can print it and you can already test it. If you have some interaction to test, of course, the dialog box should be already printed. Every single action should be also printed, and one person, while you're testing that specific prototype, you need to be prepared for every single outcome. That means that you need to imprint every possible dialog box on paper. Now, I normally do it because of time in sketching it, but what you see in this video and this screenshot is it looks like already high fidelity prototype, right? So we are not here talking about high fidelity, low fidelity. We're talking about like a paper prototype. Okay, could be a sketch, could be high, could be low. The point is that it's a paper. So this massively, you gain massively here in terms of focus on the test itself. Usability test normally you run when you have this paper prototype, because you're not dealing with the computer errors. With it doesn't click here, like, because normally when you have these kind of prototypes digitally, the user thinks I can click here, I can click there, but it doesn't work. The click doesn't work, or it's just, of course it doesn't work because it's fully, or it doesn't have a backend, or it is just what I call digital paper prototype. So if you just focus on paper prototype, you don't have those mistakes, or no mistakes. You don't have those issues to focus on. Paper prototype, immediately there, you can act as a computer, and yeah, that's it. You would see a real time interaction and focus on the person and their behavior, and yeah, which is your job to come up with better design or improve the next prototype, or even come up already with a final product. Just have a look at the video. And then we have mockup. This is just another technique. Mockup, sketch. I hope you're not getting drunk with all these methods or ideas, but try to organize them in your head. And this is just another thing. You know, it's not that you need to select one method over the other, but you need to just mix them based on your needs, based on the time that you have. You need to select the appropriate tools. Also for how to select the specific methods for your based on your specific needs as a developer, as a designer. There are plenty of websites, and they will advise you immediately, because there are like plenty. We are just in this course, we're just looking at some of them. And this is just another one, a mockup. And perhaps you are familiar with these mockups when you're looking into the internet. You know, this is a pretty even a buzzword it's considered now. So yeah, it's a scale or full-size model of a design or a device, or if it's a hardware, what you're doing. And yeah, that's it. Teaching, used for the teaching, demonstration, design, evaluation, promotion, and other purposes. And even these presentation, PowerPoint is actually one of the tools that are underrated. You know, a lot of people think like, it's just for presentation, and if you're very familiar with all the features, all the effects in the PowerPoint, you can create a very nice prototype in PowerPoint. And yeah, it all depends on also your taste and your goals, as I said before. But when it comes to mockup, is basically I don't know if you're familiar with the wireframes. We are to that next week as well. But in wireframes, normally it's black and white presentations of whatever system. Modeling whatever software you are presenting, and the main purpose there is the content and the layout, and that's why it's black and white. The mockup, I like to say, it's the fully featured wireframe, and the reason is because in the mockup you consider already, instead of black and white, you consider already the visuals, so all the aspects related to the visuals. So what we're trying to get there is as real as possible. As you can see here, a full-size model. So considering the colors, considering the fonts, all that should be already in the mockup. And once you have the mockup, well, you can end up, if the interaction, the flow is also considered, you can already have a high fidelity prototype. So there you go. You can just build your mockups if you like. If you're already experienced with these Adobe software, they are excellent in terms of design. You can Photoshop and specifically for user experience designers, they also have specific tools. So if you are familiar or have experience with that, you can immediately build the mockups already, as prototypes, or use them and put them into a prototype of your product. So, but remember, mockup means already full of colors. The hierarchical information should be there already, meaning the font size of the content, for example. The images are already there, so it's very realistic or close to final presentation of your final product. I think it is. Yeah, finally we have this, as I said before, interactive prototype, and that is nowadays it's because of these awesome tools that we have available to us. It's very common that you immediately start with these high fidelity interactive prototypes, and you send to the users a link, and they will interact, and you can even log that data, where they clicked, how they do, and you can combine with the methods that you already know, of course, whenever you are testing your prototypes with observation, a service, etc. So here I present some tools, if you like, for interactive prototypes. But as I said before, make sure you don't spend, this course does not become learning the tool. The tool itself is a means, it's not the end. So please do not pay too much attention, don't spend too much time on learning the tools, and rather than, hey, what's my goal? Like, I need to validate my ideas, I need to validate my assumptions, look at user requirements. That's why I'm building a prototype. And if you can do it with pen and paper, fine. That's, as I said before, call me old-fashioned, but that's in my best the best method. Pen and paper, sketch it, act as a computer, ask the users to quickly iterate with your prototype, and you can have already, even with the sketch method, I mean pen and paper, you can already practice or end up with sort of interactive prototype. So don't think that only these tools allow you to come up with the interactive prototypes. I think, and by the way, do not ask me questions about these specific tools, even though I evaluate a lot of designs, a lot of prototypes that the students make based on these tools. It doesn't mean that I am an advanced user of any of these tools. I know them I know what their goal is. I know by name, but it doesn't mean that. Don't ask me questions about the tool itself. Okay, so that would be an aside goal for you as a designer to have, like how to use these ones. By the way, here I don't see Figma, that's another good one. And personally, I advise you, if you're using and you're making prototypes, Figma, this one. Some students have delivered their work using this tool, and this is a great tool. It's very allows you to do these prototypes in a very fast, interactive prototypes in a very fast way. So the learning curve of Figma. Let me just click on this one. So this is the design. Just I think there's a free version for the students, or it's a freemium model. I don't know. You have a try just to look around this one as well, because the learning curve is much less steep than these ones of these tools. A Sketch, I think, is also easy to learn. I don't know, but that's that's going to be your issue. My concern is build something, and build something quick, okay, in order to validate your assumptions and ideas. That's it. There's some inspiration links, it says here, so have fun and go and watch them. And next week we're gonna end up with more methods, I think. Yeah, but this is for week 8. Questions? And once again, I did not record this lecture. Damn. All right, guys, there are no questions. So let me see, maybe somebody raise hands. Boom, boom, boom. No, but there are messages. And I guess it has to, is it a question? It shows how it works for only the interface. I do not. Is this a question of anyone? 1:13, like 1 hour ago. More questions? No? All right, guys, then we're gonna call it a day. Please start looking into the assignment for the coming weeks, week 7 together with week 8. One assignment, use the same groups, and make fantastic prototypes, meaning build it quickly, fantastic. I don't want to be super surprised by the high fidelity or low fidelity that you have there. I want to be by the results, the validation that your prototypes allowed you to come up with. Like, all right, this is validated, this has not been validated, and that's why you opt to put it into the final product or not. So that's, for me, that's the most important thing as an assessor. Okay. And with that, we're going to say call it a day. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. I'll see you next lecture.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks, class. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye bye.